Mitch Guthrie, and this episode's guest is Chad Holmes. Chad, tell me about yourself.
I am a person in long-term recovery, and I moved to Washington in 2010 from Massachusetts, where I was born and raised.
And why all the way across the country?
Well, I came across the country to get clean and sober because I started my addiction in Massachusetts. But when I moved out here, it didn't work. Moving halfway across the world, United States, did not work.
Do you have a support system here? Did you have a support system here when you moved?
Yes, I have an uncle and some cousins, and my mother and sister lived out here.
Okay, so you knew people, so you're getting out of Boston to hopefully find recovery. What was it like in Boston? How'd you end up in Boston?
Well, I grew up there. So my family originated in Charlton, Massachusetts, which is a little town in Worcester County. And I lived on a farm and grew up as a country boy. But I led to going into substances to fit into the crowds that I wanted to hang out with.
Okay, so it was like a social pressure thing.
Yes, in one form or another.
And so you said your mom was over here. What family did you have over there?
So my mom lived over here too, lived over in Massachusetts too. In 2007, my mom moved out to Washington. My parents got divorced when I was 16, and I was in split households back and forth. And then in 2007, when I was graduating high school, my mom's like, "I'm gonna move out to Washington, where my sister moved to start her life over."
Okay. So in that, what would you say your childhood was like? Was it normal, pretty sane, or insane, or somewhere in between?
My childhood was in between. I had a good relationship with my mother. My father was a distant relationship. More of I need to do the farm duties, and wasn't really a relationship there. It was just more, you need to do this, you need to do that, make sure the barn's clean, and it was more of a working relationship.
Okay. So you get into drugs. Sounds like a social scenario type thing. Was there a point? I mean, how old were you at this time?
The first time I started using, I was 13.
And when you decided that you had a problem, you needed to move, how old were you then?
24.
Okay. So 24, was there something that happened? Was there a point that you just hit? What made you realize you needed to get out of it?
So I was renting a room from a buddy of mine, and I was doing a lot of bad stuff, selling and taking care of my addiction any way I could to stay where I was going. And I was walking home one day from work and seeing the house being raided, and I got on a plane and flew out of there.
Like the house being raided by cops?
Yes.
Why were the cops raiding your house?
Because they got information that there was manufacturing of ecstasy going on in there.
And was there?
Yes.
Oh, wow. And these are roommates? These are you? Is it who all's living in this house?
So it's me and one roommate. And it was third floor apartment, and his parents owned the apartment building. So we just were upstairs, and I was pressing pills to fix my need of substances.
So were the cops swarming the building and you're just like, well, I'm out of here? Or was it did you have to go back afterward? And hopping on a plane seems like it would be challenging in such a short notice there.
So I ran to my brother's house down the street because we lived 3 blocks away from each other. And I'm like, I need to get to the airport. And he's like, why? What's going on? I'm like, I just need to go to the airport. I'm like, I can't go back home. I just need to go to the airport. And he's like, I'm not bringing you. And then I told him what was going on. He goes, I'm like, I'm not getting caught. I'm like, if you're not going to bring me, I'll find someone to bring me. And he brought me to the airport, and I sat at the airport for 8 hours before I could get on a plane. Just sat there, bought a ticket there, and waited. 8 hours later, I was on a plane.
When you landed in Washington?
Washington.
And at the time, were you able to communicate to the family you had over here?
I had messaged my sister and let her know I decided to move out there. And I was going to be getting on a plane, and I'll be landing there at, I don't remember what time it was in the morning. And she says, okay, I'll be there to pick you up.
Oh, okay. So, you know, you're now in this kind of new area for you, wanting to get out, get away. So what happens next? Where do you end up staying? How does that work out?
So I stayed with my sister for 2 weeks because it was before Christmas, and we were going to surprise my mom as me as a Christmas present. So I stayed with my sister and her husband at the time, and we surprised my mom on Christmas Day with me for Christmas.
And was that a gift your mom wanted?
She was excited. She had no clue because I kept messaging her and talking to her like I was still back in Massachusetts.
So she didn't know about your issues back in Boston?
No. Wasn't until I got into stuff out here that she knew that I had a problem.
So you land on your feet. Where do you end up here then? Where you're back in substance use again? So
I was in Vancouver for a couple months, and then I moved up here to Centralia and stayed with my mom. I started working through temp agencies and tried to get going, and I started hanging out with my cousin and got back into drinking alcohol and smoking weed.
And so you kind of had a little bit of a social network here to start from, but it sounds like perhaps drug use runs in certain parts of the family.
Yes. Some of my family does run in substances. Yes.
And so like you said, your mom wasn't aware of your situation. When did she become aware of that?
That would have been in 2011, the first time I got arrested.
What'd you get arrested for?
Possession of methamphetamines, possession of stolen property, and residential burg.
And so how did that play out with you and your mom and family-wise?
So they bailed me out of jail that one time, and I told them I was going to do right. I was going to do, everything that I needed to do. And it didn't work. I got out and went right back to the same thing.
And did you mean it? Or was it like just saying what you need to say to get the heat off of you, or both?
Both. Like I wanted it, but I wasn't ready. I wanted to get clean. I wanted to, I didn't want to go back to jail, but I wasn't ready to give up the substances.
And so you're now on the radar, say, of the local police here.
Yes, it took 3 weeks for me to get picked back up.
Oh, from your arrest. And this is Vancouver, you said?
Yeah, I got picked up here in Centralia.
Okay, so Vancouver, Centralia, you're already getting into it with law enforcement. What's that look like as you have to show up for court, stuff like that?
So I went to court the first time, and then I got picked up again. So then I went back to jail and didn't get bailed out. I sat in there for 11 months and got sentenced. And and then got sentenced on the second one and did another 11 months. So I did 22 months then. And then I got out, and it took me 3 more days to get back arrested again.
At this time, so 22 months back to back, were you addicted at the time? Struggling with addiction?
I was struggling. While I was in jail, I was struggling the whole time. I was using substances while I was in jail. I never stopped.
So you didn't even go through the process of either just going cold turkey or medically assisted treatment or anything like that?
Yes, neither. I had some time in there. So at times there were some dry spells where I couldn't get what I wanted. But I was using periodically throughout jail.
I don't even know where to go next with that. So your family's response then, now you've basically spent almost 2 years in jail. How did your family respond?
My mom gave me tough love. She loved me, but I could not stay with her anymore. I had to do things different. She distanced herself. She would not give me money because it was only going to go to my habit. She wouldn't help me out in that way anymore, that capacity. She showed me tough love. And it started really getting heavy on me. So I avoided my family at that point.
So who was your social circle then? Who were you hanging out with at that time?
I was hanging out with acquaintances, which at that time were friends. But when it comes down to it, you realize when you get clean that they were not friends. They were just acquaintances. If I don't have nothing to offer them, they want nothing to do with me.
Yeah, if you're not going to participate in life, then that's where the relationship, began and ended, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So where do you hit the point where you say, I need it? Like, where you accept responsibility, you want to change?
So when I went to jail the last time, I had met a couple people in jail that were really into their Bible and doing little Bible studies. It wasn't until I got a poem that came through from the minister that I read it and really pictured myself as that poem. Putting my life up on a shelf to be worked upon. It's called God's Hotel. And that poem really hit hard to me. Like I was in his place, but he was putting me there because it wasn't because I was being bad. It was because he wanted to work on me. He wanted me to do better. So I was put up on the shelf where I was getting worked on, and I just started reading scriptures. And I got Ephesians 8, body armor God.
Mm-hmm.
And I kept reading that every day. And I'm like, I'm going to do different this time. And my mom put money on my book, so I call her. And I let her know, like, it's going to be different this time. She goes, that's what you said last time. And I kited out and talked to housing to try to get into the men's shelter. And then when I was released on June 25th, 2014, I called the men's shelter, and they had one opening, but I had 15 minutes to get there before they went to lunch. And my mom got me there, and I was able to get into the men's shelter and start the journey.
And where you served your time, was that here locally?
Lewis County, yes.
Lewis County, okay. So, the Bible study thing in the jail, what was that a product of just other inmates? Was it through some sort of ministry, or You said that there was a reverend or priest or something there. Like who was? How was that all associated together?
So there was church services that happened not frequently. When they did happen, I went, but the Bible studies was put on by other inmates, and it was just three of us that sat in our bunks. We were in the same little cubby, and we just did a Bible study together every day.
And the poem that spoke so much to you, how did you said the pastor or a pastor, somebody got that to you?
Yeah, they passed them out with daily bread. One time it was getting close to Thanksgiving. It came out, and it just came with daily bread.
Okay. And so you get out, you promise your mom it's going to be different this time, and you get into the men's shelter. Now, is shelter housing? What is it? What's the distinction?
So it's the men's shelter. So it's the one right down the street here that was for transitional. I think it was 90-day shelter, men's shelter.
And so you qualified for transitional housing, basically.
Yes.
And got in 15 minutes, which is just the funniest cutoff there. How many other people in the house?
There was approximately 15 people in there at that time.
And similar life experience as you?
Yes. It's where I met one of my friends from active addiction, Dale Drew.
Yeah.
And he led me back together from the men's shelter that day.
Okay. So what of your old connections?
Meaning?
Like the people that you now call acquaintances. When you got out, did you want to get in contact with them? Did you want to stay as far away from them as you could? Was there a draw there?
I wanted to stay as far away as I could this time. I cut myself off from all of them. I did run into them at times, but I made sure I did not have my back against the wall. I was able to get out of every situation.
And so Dale, our friend Dale, who's passed away now, he gets you together for what? What did he tell you that was available to gather?
Yeah, he told me, let's go over to gather and have coffee and sit down and talk. So I did. I went with him, and we went and we got a coffee, and I sat there all day. He took off. I don't know where he went, but I just sat there because I figured this was a safe place. I could just sit there and not have to worry about relapsing.
And at the time, I mean, Gather was just the main chapel that we have, the small little chapel, and then the back of that, which is now our child care center, it was a cafe during the day, and you can get coffee or whatever. So this was before the A-Train, before the Eat Free Cafe, before all of that stuff.
Yes, it was. It was the little cafe, which is now the daycare, where I met Mega Steve and Pastor Cole for the first, not for the first time, but for the first time when I was clean and actually willing to talk to people.
And you had a run-in with Gather while you were not clean?
Yes, I went to Gather for the meals when I was using, and I got in a fight with my ex, and I threw her and all her stuff out of my truck onto the sidewalk and drove away and left. And she took what she wanted and left all the garbage on the side of the road.
Yeah, if you talk to Cole shared this story before, that his first memory of you is you pushing all this stuff out of your car, including a person, and then driving off and leaving. And he had to come out and clean up all that stuff, and he always recounts this and how far you've come. You're not the person who would do that today, but still kind of a interesting first impression to leave on somebody who would later, be pretty influential in your life.
Yes, and left a huge impact because when I did come back around, it didn't get brought back up and thrown in my face that I did this. It was pushed to the side and still seeing me as a human and treated me with dignity and respect and helped me grow in my recovery and life as a.
And has it always been that way for you?
For meaning?
I think there's this idea, the practice of radical grace, of accepting people where they're at, also means that you don't challenge or you don't push them harder or call them out on their, poor behavior. So, I think it's great that you were welcome to come back without judgment. Would you say that your experience together has been also one of challenge and trying to ask you to do better?
So yes, they did. They wanted me to do better. But without the grace and the compassion, I would not have gotten better. They let me grow at the pace that I needed to, so that I could be who I am today. They didn't force me or push me in the way I wasn't ready to go. They encouraged me and built me up where I needed the strength to do what I needed to do.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm hearing that you felt this was a pretty safe place to be.
Yeah, so going back to my release on the 24th and 25th is when I went to gather. I met Mega Steve and I overheard him talking to someone. Would you give up 18 months of your life to stay clean? I said, yes. What do I got to do? But I just waited until he was done talking to the guy. And then I walked up to him. I'm like, I'll give up 18 months of my life to stay clean. What do I got to do? And he's like, well, we're about to go do Socks in the City down at the Riverside Park. If you don't have nothing going on, how about you come with us? And I'll introduce you to Cole and we can talk a little more about it. I said, awesome.
And just for listeners, Socks in the City was our initiative to bring food and socks to the park. People could come get a meal and then they can get socks, because socks are such a critical part of being, when you're homeless. There's so clean, dry socks are critical. And so it's kind of funny, obviously, the play on the name there. But yeah, I was just going to a park. We usually have a couple grills and hot dogs and hamburgers and whatever. And people showed up, get what they need, and, hang out for a little bit and go on their way. So Steve invites you to that.
Yes. And then we go down there and I go with them and we get set up and everything. And I meet Cole and we're talking. And at that moment, he asked me if I'd been baptized. And I said, when I was a young child, I was, but I was never baptized in my willingness. And we went down to the river and I was baptized that day and turned my life over to a new leaf to God.
I was there that day. I was there. That was at Riverside.
Yes, it was.
And that's probably one of my earliest memories of you is watching Steve and Cole baptize you. I remember talking to you afterward. I thought, this is kind of funny. I thought you were chewing gum because it smelled like some sort of grape, like whatever gum. And it turned out it was chew. I had no idea. It was the only time in my life I ever wanted to try chew is when I smelled that, because I was like, that smells like candy. But yeah, we talked that day on by the Riverside there, and I remember you getting baptized. That was close to around the same time that my wife and I started participating at Gather and going there. So you and I have both kind of started that journey around the same time. And that was a good day.
It was an amazing day, because at that point I felt weight lifted off my shoulders and I was able to start progressing in the areas that I needed to progress in. I forgave myself for the most part. I still had a lot of work ahead of me and a lot of journey to go. I was at that point only 6 months clean, including jail time, because at that point, December 5th in 2013 is when I stopped using in jail and turned my life over to God in there. And I started working on my journey in recovery. Started working on the Bible studies every day and figuring out what I wanted to do. And I still had no clue what I wanted to do when I got released. I just knew I did not want to use.
So what was the 18 months of your life offer?
So it was talking about going up to Seattle into one of the programs up there that was an 18-month program. I don't remember what it was, but instead I went through the Into the Light program at Gather.
And that was a program for men, provided housing and counseling, as well as, stuff to do, usually helping out around Gather, doing meal services, things like that, right?
Yes, giving back to the community.
And that was pretty new at the time. I think you were one of the first.
I was one of the first 2 in the program.
Yeah. And how many were in the program over the time that you were in it?
So there was 5, 6.
Dale was in the program, wasn't he?
Yes.
Yeah. Was he in the same time with you?
Me and Dale got in at the same time, yes.
Okay. And so explain your experience with Into the Light and what that did for you.
So Into the Light gave me a purpose during the day, giving back to those in need. And that started my journey on learning how important it is in recovery to give back to others, to helping someone, if it's just someone to talk to, giving them a pair of socks, or just putting a smile on someone's face by saying hi to them, because no one says hi to them that often. And it rewarded me and gave me a good feeling, and it helped me continue to push forward.
In this, it kind of sounds, because I remember when you moved here after I met you at Gather, you had talked that your experience was in, was it natural gas or something like that in Boston?
HVAC, heat and ventilation, air conditioning, refrigeration. So I did oil burners and from split units to commercial to...
And I remember you talking about that being your experience, what you had, and then you're over here, and obviously a little bit different setup, different climate, different situation. At the time, though, I felt like you were trying to look for something to do, to be, like something not of what your previous experience had led you down. Would that be fair to say?
Yes. I was wanting to get back into that, but because of the charges that I had received from my active addiction, I was unable to get back in that field because of residential burgs. They would not allow me in people's houses.
Gotcha. Okay. So there's limitations in what you could do. And so you're in this program. You're with initially Dale, and there's several other guys that join up. Where did you start to find where you kind of wanted to go? Like, where did you start working that path out to what you do today, which we'll get into,
So at my 6-month mark, Cole had sat down with me and asked me what I was going to do. He wanted me to write a calendar and figure out my day-to-day, my plan. Where did I want to go and everything. So I said, I want to go back to school. I want to go to college. He's like, okay, so what are you going to do? I'm like, I don't know yet. I'm going to go over there and I'm going to read the pamphlets and see what they have to offer.
And why was school important to you?
Because I figured if I got an education in something, then it could help divide the barrier of what my past was. If I go to school and they approve me for this program, obviously my background's not going to affect me in getting a job in this field, is how I looked at it. It gives me a little more credibility when I went to apply for the job. It gave me a little more of a backbone, like, hey, I got some experience. I went to school for this, and I figured it would be better for me to be able to get good employment.
Did you struggle with how you viewed yourself?
Absolutely. I viewed myself how a lot of people view homeless and addicts. I don't view that the same today. But at the time of early recovery, I looked down upon myself that I was a horrible person and I didn't deserve anything good.
And so this college experience is a opportunity to maybe do something different or be a different way. Also, looking forward to getting a job, like something that can pay the bills, right?
Yes.
So, what did you end up going to school for then?
So I went to school for, at the time it was called chemical dependency. Now it's called substance use disorder professional. And I wanted to become a drug and alcohol counselor to help other addicts like myself get clean and sober and find purpose in life.
And that's actually like a pretty common, trail that people take from, certainly around here at Gather, there's a lot of people who had struggled with substance use disorder who are now working either in helping people get housing or care or the clinic or whatever. How did you, it's one thing to have this idea in your head. Okay, this is what I'm going to go do. How did it play out? How did college go for you?
So I graduated college in 2016. And I got my AA degree in chemical dependency. I have been working in the field now for 6 years. And it was, at first, I was going through school and I was worried about, I attempted to get a couple internship jobs and I was denied because of my background. And I'm like, oh no, it's going to be the same cycle all over again. And then I prayed about it and thought about it. And I said, hey, if I take a lesser position at that agency, I can get my foot in the door and work my way up. And that's what I did. I went and I got a job as a substance use coordinator. And within 3 months, I transferred over to being a regular counselor. But it just took 3 months of me being in the door and showing that I can do this in my worth to be able to get that position as a regular counselor.
And how did this line up with your time in the program, the resident program of Into the Light?
So I did 1 year 2 years in the program. I did from 2014 to 2016. I was just finishing. I graduated in 2017, not 16. I got in 2016. I got married and moved out and finished up college and started working January of 2017.
And so, what would you say you were at maturity-wise in dealing with, because college is stressful, moving out is stressful, getting married is stressful, and I'm seeing a lot of growth and change as you're making these decisions, and I'm sure there were people counseling you and working with you through that. But how would you say you were growing as a person through all this?
So maturity level, I was very low still at that point. Like it's better than I was when I first entered, but I was still working on a lot of growth. I had a lot of growth to do, a lot of growth to be made. And during school, growing up, I always said I was never going to college because I'm not smart enough for college. I can't do it, which was just me having self-doubt in myself to being able to succeed at something. And then I went to school my first semester. I did really good. Second semester, I did really good. Winter quarter, I did not that good. And I had to retake classes because I didn't focus or put as much effort in it as I did in the other semesters. But me being required to pay for those classes to retake them, put a lot more thought and effort into my schooling and saying like, I'm here because I choose to be. I need to put my all in this. And it helped me realize that the reason why I didn't do good in regular school is because I didn't want to be there. And this is something I enjoy. This is something I love, is helping others in chemical dependency. And so I want to be there and I want to help others. So I need to apply myself like I want them to apply for me.
So there's some growing up to do and some learned experience, I guess you say. So did you, in all of this, have a sort of a low point realization? Was there, it sounds like the poem thing, I'm going to return to that because it does sound like, oftentimes we have something of like an aha moment. Not all the time, though. Sometimes it's just a gradual recognition that something's off or we need to do something different. But would you say you had sort of that moment where you had to like take it seriously, where even if you didn't know what it looked like, you need to do something differently?
Yeah, when I was reading that poem, there's some words in there that really clicked to me. Being led around like a bit. I was chasing that bag all over town. No matter where I was going, I was looking for that bag. That was my main purpose at that time in active addiction, is where am I going to get my next fix to feel better, to feel good, to be able to keep going. That was my bit. It's being led all over the place just to get that.
And you didn't want to continue that. You didn't want to.
I realized that was my kryptonite. That was the reason why I was living the way I was living. That's why I didn't have my family in my life. That's why I didn't have a place to go every night. That was my issue. I had places to go. I could go to the dealer's house, yeah, but I still have the same worries every night. Like, am I going to be able to be there? Am I going to be able to be here? Where am I going to go? And I wanted my family back, I wanted to have actual family relationships back.
And have you accomplished that? Are you and your family?
I have accomplished that. I have a great relationship with my mom today. She is super proud of me of where I'm at and the journey that I've taken. I have a good relationship with my sister. Actually, this year, I was able to get ordained and officiate my sister's wedding.
Oh, very cool. And do you think about Boston? You ever want to go back there?
I want to go back and visit. I don't want to go back and live there. I want to go back and visit because I still have some real good friends out there that I still talk to on a regular basis. Some childhood friends that I grew up with that we have a lot of memories together and have great relationships still. They were upset with the choices I made and what I did, and how I just took off, but they still love and appreciate for who I am and still talk to me.
Very cool. So you found sort of a purpose in this working with others in recovery. How, how many times have you tried recovery on your own when you were in active addiction?
So I have probably about 15 to 20 times. And the longest I was able to stay sober at that time was a month.
And so your experience in addiction and in that, and then your passion for desiring to help others recover themselves, how's it different? How's what you had to deal with at that time different today with what other people struggling with substance use disorder?
So today it's a whole different beast because of when I was actively using, fentanyl was not that common. It was there, but it was not as actively common as it is today. And fentanyl is in so many different substances. It's not just, it's in heroin, it's in the meth, you don't know what it's in. It could be in the weed that they're smoking. You don't know what it's in.
And it changes the properties of the response to the drug. It amplifies it.
It hooks you. It gets you hooked. And, because you get sick when you don't have it. And so relapse rate is higher now. It's trying to help people get off it is much harder than just back when I was using meth. It's completely different. Some people say I'm only using meth, but yet their UA comes back with fentanyl in it. You're not just using meth. You think it's only meth, but there's other stuff in it.
And so it's like a completely different beast than what you had to deal with in your struggle with addiction. So, what would you tell somebody today who is in active drug use? If you can reach out to people, which is what you're doing. Well, let's take a quick break here. So what do you do here? Like, you work at Gather, right?
I work at Gather,
Okay,
yes.
and what do you do?
So I am a recovery navigator and an SUDP. So I am working with people struggling with addiction and helping them connect with resources through the RNP program.
And like, what kind of resources?
So if it's from helping them get a birth certificate or ID to getting into treatment, mental health treatment, SED treatment, help them navigate their path to success. If it's just referring them out to other agencies or working on getting them an assessment to get to inpatient, getting to detox, making sure transporting them there so that they get there safely, that they get in to detox, to medically detox off the substances, just help navigate their path.
And get them where they need to be, basically.
Yes.
So, that's what you do. How do you respond to people today that you see in active addiction?
With love and compassion. Because where they're at, even though they're under the influence of substances or that they're homeless on the street, it doesn't mean that they're this bad person or that they're a horrible person. It means that they're struggling. And they need the love and the compassion and hope to get out of that. They need to have someone who cares about them as a human to get to where they need to be.
And what would you say to people to say that what they need is just more personal responsibility? And because we hear that, and I don't think anybody at Gather would disagree with that. But I don't know if it stands on its own, just completely untethered from other things that need to be going on in that person's life.
Personal responsibility is not the 100% answer. It's not. They need the love and the compassion to be able to know, hey, someone does care about me. So my life does matter. Because when you're stuck in addiction for a long time, you feel like nothing matters. Your life don't matter, nothing matters, because nothing's gone good. And you're stuck in this loop for so long that it's impossible to change. It's impossible to do better because no matter what you do, it fails. And no matter what you touch, it breaks. And to have love and compassion and being shown how to live in a healthy manner is night and day.
And so personal responsibility is one part of this puzzle that you got to put together to, find that success, which is personal responsibility, community, finding value in yourself that's worth saving, and then
housing.
Huge
thing. Housing. If you don't have a place to lay your head at night, that you know that you're safe, you don't have to look over your back, you're dry, what do you have?
Well, and like the first thing you needed to line up when you got out of jail was housing.
Yes.
And it was like a short window, almost didn't get it sort of thing.
Yes, because in that 15 minutes was then they go to lunch, and then someone else could have been there before I was there to get that one last opening.
And that's
because there was one opening available.
And that was in 2014. Today, the situation's even more dire for those. And after you moved from transitional housing, you were in a men's program that had provided housing for you.
Yes.
All part of your recovery. Important. Was it? I mean, you've made some good friends in that program as well that you still see and work with today, correct?
Yes.
How do you deal with stigma?
That's one thing that drastically needs to be worked on. Like, I am on multiple platforms trying to break the stigma of addiction and mental health, and to make it socially acceptable. But you still got some people that are negative no matter what you post, no matter what you say.
In what ways?
Like, well, then just stop or just quit. Just, well, you chose this yourself.
Sorry.
It's...
just quit. Why didn't I think of that?
And like, you chose this yourself. Like, not everybody woke up in the morning and said, I'm going to be an addict now. That's what I want to be. I want to be an addict. I'm going to use drugs all day, and that's what I'm going to do. No, there's something, an underlying issue. If it was you broke your wrist and you got caught and you got stuck on oxys and it led you down this road, or if it was emotional, physical, sexual trauma that you used it to escape, it's not that you did choose to use it originally, but it rewires your brain. And then at that point, it's no longer a choice. It's a necessity.
Well, an addiction is a symptom, not a cause. It's what you're seeing, and a secondary thing from some primary cause, which could be, driven by many different things as well. So treating the addiction is a part of it and accepting responsibility for that. But there's way more to it than that. We're complicated. We're, integrated. So it's like you were saying, even if you were going to go tackle the addiction part of it, yet the person's without housing and without that stability, without even like a, foundation underneath you, your chances of success are going to be, it raises the bar a lot higher.
Yes, exactly.
And so, well, I do have stories. I have a couple stories to tell. Because you've as you were in the program at Gather, you were also a part of what Gather was doing, both in ministries toward homeless, but also our kids' ministries. and one of my kids' favorite stories I tell about the year. There's been a lot of stuff. You got set up. You're you ever watch Mythbusters? They have that Buster, the dummy that they blow up or whatever. You were kind of like Buster for Gather's kids program. I think we threw balloons at you, strapped you to a board or something, threw a bunch of stuff at you.
So we threw the water balloons at me for water. And also I was sitting in the chair and they slingshot them. They had,
right.
I was across the field and they were slingshotting the water balloons.
And there was some deep theological reason for this, I'm sure. It's not just that we wanted to put you in a chair and shoot water balloons at you, but hard to say.
But it was...
I've seen you be the Easter Bunny. You dressed up. You hid, eggs all over the church property, which isn't much. So you got to get really creative. One of my kids' favorite stories, though, is we did a vacation Bible school or whatever on dirt and creation and whatever. And, the kids are all out front and Cole's talking about dirt, what comes from dirt, how it's so critical to growing and I think I can't quite remember the whole thing. And, anyways, he reaches down and he grabs this thing and he pulls you out of the ground. You had been buried all the way, completely covered except for maybe a little part of your face that they couldn't see, but you were buried completely in the flower bed. And the kids like lost their mind when Cole pulled you. Well, do you remember like?
So I remember that clear as day. So my head was underneath the bush right next to it. So I was not being able to be seen because my head was under there.
And Cole's walking around you. Like it looks like Cole's just walking right where you are.
Yeah. So we dug it down, and I laid down. They put a piece of board on top of me, and then covered it with dirt, so that my arm was out next to the board underneath the dirt. So when he was talking about how God made man, and how God formed the dirt into man, he reached down and he pulled me up. And that's when your son said, when he said God made, and your son said, Chad. And it was the best moment. Like, it was just perfect. Everyone was laughing because it was supposed to be man, but he said Chad because.
Right. He saw you coming out of the dirt.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember the kids just freaking out over that. They thought that was the craziest thing. And then through the years, they got the biggest kick out of the fact that you were always kind of somehow involuntarily involved in.
It was so voluntary. I was all about it. And then with the rock, when Moses hit the rock.
That was the water one, right?
That was the water one, yes. And I was hiding behind the bush by the water spigot. And we dug a trench and ran the hose to the bottom of a rock. So when Cole hit the rock with the staff, I turned the water on, so it shot water. And it totally blew them away that, look at this.
Look what Cole did.
And I was in the back of the bush laughing because it was hilarious. They had no clue I was there.
Right. Yeah. The kids they love those memories, and it was always a kick to see what's going to happen next year. What are we going to do to Chad next? Throw him out of a plane, something like, who knows?
Hey, it's all out of fun and bringing smiles. That's what it's about. Like the smiles and knowledge to the kids.
So, here we are. You're working to help others get out of addiction, find recovery, get housing, get the resources they need to be healthy, to live life. All the while recognizing that you are, while maybe a little further removed from where they're at, like what keeps you in recovery today?
Helping others helps me stay in recovery, seeing where they're at and knowing that they can do better, and I could easily slip right back to where they're at. All it takes is just one drink for me to lead me to smoking weed, to doing a little meth. Like all it takes is that one, and I could be right back there. And if I go back there, how can I help others get back up if I can't help myself? So I have my faith that helps me. I have a community that I work with that is supportive and helps me along the way. And it's different roles. Some of the people that I am closest to, I was a part of their recovery. And it's just amazing that we're now we're on the same playing field, working with the same.
Walking the life.
path.
Yeah. Very cool. Well, Chad, thank you so much for sharing your story. We've known each other for a while now, and we've all kind of grown and experienced and see the change. I mean, even the sadder parts of the story, Dale, my wife visited him right before he passed away in the hospital, spent some time with him. Funny guy, but it was sad to lose him.
When I heard he was in the hospital, I went there every night just to spend time with him because he played a role into where I am today. He may not known that, but if it wasn't for him bringing me back together, I wouldn't be where I am today.
Yeah.
Because I could have easily gone somewhere else instead of a safe place and found a safe place I can go every day when I was kicked out of the shelter between 10 and 7.
During the day, you got to
during the
be
day,
somewhere.
I had to be somewhere. I couldn't be there, so I had to go find somewhere. And that makes it hard for an addict. When you got to get up and leave a shelter during the day and have nowhere to go that is a safe place, it makes it hard.
Yeah, and it's been compounded. I mean, the problem with fentanyl, the seriousness of addiction compounded by the difficulties with it now, including now housing crisis, COVID, restrictions, like all this stuff that has happened the past few years. It's just made the problem so much more dire and in need of your work and others to keep trying. And, you know, I've used the analogy that like people want to get mad about how many homeless people there are or addicts or whatever you want to call it. But the way I kind of see Gather's work is, and your work and, you know, everybody is, we're at like the delta of a river just trying to pull as many people out as possible. He can't control the situation that's putting them in the river to begin with, you know, and it's just trying to do what you can with what you got, which is sort of a Gather slogan. And you're doing that work.
Yeah, and judging him and looking down on him doesn't help the situation either.
No, it just makes you feel better about what you're doing. You can ignore the problem if you just hate those people or something. And I don't think our community, I get the frustration. Nobody wants to look around and see people sleeping in doorways and on the road or trash everywhere or but having sort of what I'll call a pissy attitude about it doesn't clean up the trash and doesn't get the people off the streets and doesn't get whatever. Throwing them in jail was just going to see them back out again at however long they serve their purpose, and that's expensive as well. So, like, I don't think there's easy answers to this stuff. I don't think there's just some quick fix we can do to make it all go away. But I know that our attitude and our disposition toward those who are struggling and the issue that's a part. There's a part to play in that, and kind of holding out hope for people that someday they could claim that would have been you. That would have been Brooke. That could have been Charles. I mean, all of these people that if they hadn't found the community, they hadn't found the place to be, they hadn't found the space to be, if they hadn't been cared for, wouldn't be here today. And so, like, what's it to other people if Gather decides to care for others, you know? I get that it's hard. It's tricky. And, you know, the work you're doing, it's important. It's going to continue to be important. I don't think we're at the apex of this thing. I don't think we've reached, you know, as high as it's going to go. I have a hunch things are going to get worse before they get better. But thank you for coming here. Thank you for sharing your story, what you're doing, what you've done. I'm glad you're here. I mean, it's been a long time since you and I stood on by the river there where you had gotten baptized and talked about what you wanted to do and who you're going to be. And man, it's been
almost 9 years.
Yeah, it's been ups and downs. It's been success and